Sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is not being with someone who can fulfill your fantasies. My name is Alice, and I am 30 years old. I met my current husband, Liam, during a trip to a small coastal town very close where we both lived. We fell madly in love and decided to settle there together, creating our love nest away from the hustle and bustle of the capital. At the time, I was an 18-year-old girl obsessed with the idea of having a movie romance. Liam, 30 at that time, promised to bring all the stars in the sky to my feet, and like any teenager who was starting a romantic relationship, I believed him. However, as the years went by, all his promises went down the drain. At first, there seemed to be just a distance between us, a monotony that I attributed to our busy work lives. But when the arguments came, I knew I had made a mistake by not living my life before making a home with that man. At the same time, I felt a general dissatisfaction with married life. First, my husband did not give me my place with his family, since they did not agree that he had married a woman younger than him. Second, our intimacy was non-existent, so I turned to myself to find relief during times when desire crawled through my body. As a third point was the fact that things with Liam were very clear, or dark. Being my first intimate experience, I had no other reference that things could happen differently. But when I went to the places on the internet where I could satisfy my curiosity, I knew that I had missed out on many experiences by rushing to be with the one I considered the love of my life. But at that moment, I did not know that the solution to my problems would come in an unusual way and from the hand of a person who was forbidden to me. That's why I say that marriage should not exist, Charlotte, my best friend, told me. That day, we were in a bar while we each enjoyed a glass of wine. That plan was not usual for us since our jobs prevented us from seeing each other often, but it had a special tone. Liam's parents were coming to the country for the first time in 10 years, and I was nervous because I didn't know how to act around them. I had seen them in photographs and videos that my husband's younger brother shared with him from time to time, but their faces were still blurry. On the other hand, Liam assured me that they didn't know me since he wanted to surprise them with my beauty, a cheap excuse that I decided not to give importance to and continue playing along so as not to argue. I have to act like a good daughter-in-law anyway, right? I said, drinking from my glass. But first, you should give yourself a gift for the performance you will do tomorrow. Charlotte pointed with her glass in the direction of the bar, where an older man with an elegant and sophisticated demeanor was standing. He seemed to be staring at the table where we were, so I turned my head quickly. "You're crazy," I told her. "What's wrong?" she asked me. He then raised an eyebrow, leaning his body back. "Do you think your husband doesn't do it?" "I don't know." But I had little time to decide, because the presence of that subject was noticeable on my back. "Hello?" His voice was deeply dark and hoarse, as expected from a rather masculine man. Charlotte signaled me with her eyes to turn my body, and almost out of inertia, I obeyed to run into the man from the bar. He was wearing a light beige linen shirt, slightly open at the neck, giving him a casual yet sophisticated look. That garment was combined with khaki chinos, perfectly fitted but not too formal, and light brown leather loafers that gave it a touch of urban elegance. "My name is Andrew, and you?" "Alice," I said, without waiting for any other impulse. Soon, Andrew decided to join us at the table and assured us that everything we consumed would go towards the bill. Charlotte had gotten so excited that she didn't know how to gauge her tolerance for liquor, so sooner rather than later I found myself alone with the man at the bar. Our conversation flowed as if we had known each other all our lives, even when the topic seemed trivial. There was something about his aura, about the way the words wrapped around his mouth, that took my breath away. My hands became restless, nervously fiddling with the rim of my glass. Every time our eyes met, I felt a shudder run through my body, as if I were trapped in a spell that I couldn't escape. That's when I knew I didn't care what happened next. I had to try what he was indirectly offering me. We never said if we had a commitment or if there was something that prevented us from being together. In any case, neither of us had a wedding ring on. Instead, when my back fell onto the softness of the hotel bed, I completely forgot my married life and let myself be carried away by the heat emanating from Andrew's body and the humidity of his mouth against every millimeter of skin. We were together 4 times before saying goodbye and continuing on our way. I hadn't received my in-laws yet, so I couldn't risk losing face in front of them by being late to meet them. However, I had to admit that the adventure I had had helped me relax and be more prepared for the visit of Liam's parents. Everything seemed to be going perfectly when I woke up in the double bed I shared with my husband. But the next morning brought with it a new problem, and I found out about it when I saw him enter the porch of our house. Andrew's gaze and mine met, not hiding our surprise at seeing each other. I felt my heart beat harder when I noticed that he was holding the hand of a woman next to him, who was not only his wife, but also my husband's mother. They introduced us both, and we shook hands, trying to ignore the discomfort, at the same time that Liam told his parents where to leave their belongings. The evening passed normally. However, no matter how much I tried to evade Andrew's presence, he continued to be in the same place as me. Plus, I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable with the fact that she had been unfaithful to my husband with his own father. The only thing that consoled me was knowing that my secret would be safe, since he didn't seem to want to complicate his marriage. In fact, Andrew was the model husband and father, hugging his wife while they cooked and helping his son with whatever he needed. Little did they know what he hid behind that facade, but I, who had seen him transform into a different person, seductive, hungry for desire, it was almost comical to see him in his role. I had declared victory when I placed the last of the washed dishes in its place. It was night and everyone was asleep, except me, who had found a way to relieve the burden I felt at that moment in doing chores. The living room in our house wasn't that big, but it felt narrower than usual. My in-laws were sleeping in my room while my husband had taken the room. I was planning to stay on the couch we had there until a whisper made me jump. "Can we talk?" Andrew was shirtless, showing the definition of his athletic body, while his pajama pants hung from his hips. I nodded, swallowing thickly after seeing a part that seemed to grow as I continued to look at it. He sat on the furniture while I imitated him, only putting distance between us. "It goes without saying that I didn't know who you were when—" "Me neither," I interrupted. "If I had known, I wouldn't have done it." "But you still deceived my son, and you to your wife." After a few seconds, he let out a low laugh that left me confused. "You don't seem sorry," he said. I frowned, not understanding why he said that. But when his face approached mine, my body froze as I felt his presence close to me again. "It even seems like you would like to repeat what we did." At that moment, I felt my center contract due to the sensuality of the words that came out of Andrew's mouth. I squeezed my legs, looking for friction in them, since talking about it with my father-in-law on my couch felt forbidden. Plus, doing it in a place where anyone could see us was one of my fantasies that my boring husband hadn't wanted to make come true. Would this be the opportunity life was giving me to taste a little of what I had been missing in my marriage? I didn't know exactly. But my body seemed possessed by the need to find out what it wanted, so it came to life by sitting astride my father-in-law. He looked surprised, but his hands grabbed my hips, indirectly pulling me towards him. "Yeah." "Yes, what?" he responded. "Yes, I want to repeat what we did. I knew I was taking more risks than I should have, since once it was considered a mistake, but the second time it was something premeditated." However, when Andrew's lips touched mine, melting into a tight, fiery kiss, I completely forgot any of my worries. My hips came to life as they brushed against his in a tortuous swing that ended with his growing bulge almost exploding in his pants. He half removed his pants, and I did the same with my insides, sinking into me in one go. It didn't hurt at all, as it felt like my center had been molded exclusively for my father-in-law. The sounds that came out of my mouth were calmed by Andrew's big hand, who guided my hips up and down with the other. As the seconds passed, I accelerated my pace and tried to go deeper to touch that key point on my body that made me go crazy. At the same time, it felt like every entry and exit was easier. It felt so liquid between my legs that we had to worry because each time the clash of our hips sounded. However, neither of them seemed to care about that. We were just trying to get free a second time before either of us, his wife or my husband, caught us in the act. But it was so natural to do it with Andrew that feeling it was like a reward for all the years in which I couldn't finish with my husband. Anyway, my father-in-law had already done it before, in the hotel bed while my four limbs were resting on the soft mattress while he thrust hard, taking me to know the sky with each one of them. It was a whirlwind of contradictory emotions: guilt, desire, passion, madness, and a little remorse. But at that moment, I couldn't think of anything but the passionate man in front of me, a man who was everything I shouldn't want, but was just the one who had taught me what it felt like to be a woman. I knew we were playing with fire, that our actions would have devastating consequences for everyone involved if we were ever caught. But in that moment, covered in sweat sitting on my father-in-law's lap, all that seemed to fade in comparison to the burning passion that consumed us. Here ends my confession of this story of forbidden passion. Do you think I did right? Tell me what you think in the comments, please. And if you like this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. I thought I had managed to seduce my son-in-law, but the reality was completely different. This is my story. My name is Emily, and I am a devoted housewife. Even though I am 58 years old, my life has been the same since I was 20 when I married Benjamin. I usually stay at home cooking and doing chores while my husband spends all day at work or drinking with his friends on the weekends. We have 3 adult children who, for several years, no longer live with us. That being the case, it was normal for me to feel lonely to the point where I didn't feel like doing my daily activities. I even began to notice that I was getting sick often, even though I was a strong woman who almost never had even a cold. However, everything changed when my oldest daughter, Sophie, moved near our house with her new boyfriend, Oliver. They were both 26 years old and had an energy that was contagious, so for me it was like a blessing that they frequented me during the weekends and even some lunches on work days. But as the months passed, I began to experience something that undoubtedly put me in an uncomfortable situation. I didn't know how or when, but it was clear that I was enthralled by my son-in-law, who was not only a handsome and athletic man, but also had impeccable manners and always had a good topic of conversation. I love talking to you, Emily. He had told me one day when we were having lunch together, since Sophie had to go out for work reasons and I loved serving him. I love your company, I responded, smiling as I continued serving his plate. You are identical to your daughter, or should I say that she is identical to you? I blushed at the comment. What things do you say, Oliver? It's serious, he exclaimed. They are both equally dedicated, loving, helpful, and they cook delicious. Then, when I went to hand him his plate, he took my hand. My heart skipped a beat when I felt the contact of his skin with mine, something so innocent that it seemed to me since we were alone. That day I cried as I watched him leave for his house with Sophie, and I was left alone in my home again. I knew that my daughter was in love with Oliver because, as her mother, I knew her like the back of my hand. But the more I thought about it, the more jealous I became that she could get the attention I wanted from H. It even bothered me to sleep with my husband Benjamin, with whom I had not been intimate for several years. In any case, Benjamin did not seem to want to be intimate with me, so in my nights of desire, which had returned after sharing with Oliver often, I had to solve it alone. I had so much desire that I didn't mind doing it with my husband fallen from the ground, even though my mind kept thinking about the young man who had conquered my daughter's heart. Up until that point, my attraction to Oliver was something innocent and personal that I kept to myself. However, everything would change on my birthday. That day, Sophie had taken me to a spa and beauty salon as a gift. It had been a considerable amount of time since we last had a mother-daughter outing, so we decided to take that moment to share together. The treatments they did on our hair, face, and body made me feel younger and empowered, capable of seducing anyone who was in front of me. But all that feeling would go to waste when she confessed one of her secrets to me. "I'm trying to get pregnant," she said. That hit me like a bucket of cold water, because although I should have been happy because my daughter would give me my first grandchild, it was the last thing I wanted at that moment. "I'm very happy to hear it." Those were the only words that came out of my mouth. She knew they weren't like a mother who was happy that her daughter would follow the cycle of life, but it was the most honest thing she could express at that moment. However, Sophie seemed not to notice and instead continued the conversation. "But I have a problem." My daughter's remorseful face made me suspect that not everything was rosy with the news she told me. "Which one?" I said, interested. "Oliver doesn't know." "What?" I exclaimed. "Oliver doesn't really want to be a dad," he confessed to me. "But you know how much I want to start a family with him. I decided to stop taking care of myself, so when I get pregnant, I will say it was a failure." "Sophie." "Mom, promise me you won't tell Oliver anything about this." At that moment, I felt my breath stop. I knew that the promise I had made to Sophie was worth a lot since she was my daughter, but I also had powerful information in my hands to get what I wanted. That was going around in my head throughout my birthday evening, where my husband and my 2 remaining children dedicated themselves to getting drunk while Sophie and Oliver attended to the other guests, delivering the food and other things they had prepared. But when night fell, Sophie told me that she felt tired, so she would go to bed early after organizing everything. My children and my husband continued drinking to the loud music, and Oliver didn't seem to want to join them, so I went to where he was alone to sit next to him. "Did you have a good time today?" he asked me. I smiled. It was a good evening. That day, I had decided to wear a short black suit very close to my silhouette that made me look 10 years younger. As Sophie's advice, she had made me wear it without an interior because, according to her, it was fashionable. So, at that moment when the blizzard was blowing hard, I felt frozen in my little black dress that covered absolutely nothing. "Emily, you're shivering," he told me, covering me with his body instantly. But that didn't matter to me at all. Instead, a torrent of emotions began to engulf me instantly as my senses heightened, capturing every detail of this moment. The comforting aroma of H lotion, the rhythmic beat of her heart merging with mine, the sensation comforting from his warm, firm body against mine. At that moment, I decided to do what I wanted because if my daughter was able to use Oliver to get something she wanted, I could also do the same. "I think I should go inside," I told him, testing his reaction. "I'll accompany you," he said without saying a word. Then he took me by the hand, leading me with him towards the warmth of my house. I felt in heaven because I was receiving the treatment I wanted so much, even without realizing that we were alone in my room. When I closed the door, I made sure it was locked, because I knew perfectly well that I would not leave there until I was able to enjoy the only preferential treatment that my daughter had, and I did not. "I think this might look good on you," he told me, showing me a jumpsuit that practically covered my body. I bit my lip. It was at that moment or it would never be. "I have something to tell you, Oliver," I said. "What happened?" "Are you okay, Emily?" he asked, frowning. "I'm fine," I responded, approaching him slowly. My legs felt like jelly, but I pretended to be safe as I moved forward. But not my daughter. What do you mean? He didn't move. Instead, he seemed paralyzed by my sudden change in attitude. She will stop taking care of herself so that they both have a child. His bulging eyes did not surprise me, and even made me feel sorry for him. Oliver seemed confused and upset by what he said, so he took a couple of seconds to respond to what he had said. How do you know? He told you? Clear. I'm his mother after all, I said with a shrug. He also told me that you don't want to be a dad. For nothing in the world, he said, shaking his head. Why would Sophie do something like that to me? Sometimes women must look for desperate measures to get what we want, I said, almost as if the voice of experience was speaking, even though it was my first time breaking out of the mold of the perfect woman and housewife. At that moment, I sat on the bed, stretching my skin and sighing deeply. I slowly opened my legs, revealing that I was not wearing the underwear, as he was standing in front of me. His eyes were bulging again, but this time it was different. His cheeks were painted a pink tone that made him look younger, while he could notice his Adam's apple go up and down several times when he swallowed thickly. You have nothing to fear with me, I said. As time passed, his gaze darkened as he remained fixed there, where my center was shamelessly exposed. I decided to lift my dress a little higher while slowly touching my legs. He licked his lips still without moving from the spot. Are you sure? Completely, I said without saying a word. With each passing second, I felt my center contract, becoming wet and ready to be used by Oliver. Suddenly, he knelt in front of me and taking one of my legs, he raised it to his shoulder. Then I felt his hot mouth on my leg, going up with butterfly kisses over every inch of my skin. My mind was spinning as I felt the moisture growing in my crotch, at the same time as my upright chest begged to be touched. But my mind exploded when his tongue first explored my opening. It was so soft but cold that it was impossible for me to cover the sobs that came out of my mouth, much less when both hands grabbed my hips and pressed me to their face while following a pattern that was leading me to no heaven. It wasn't long before I finally exploded, filling his face with my juices. Contrary to what I thought, he decided to clean his mouth with his tongue, tasting my fluids without any shame. But that was far from over, because my dress flew over my body at the same time that my forelimbs landed on the softness of the mattress. Furthermore, Oliver put pressure on my back, causing my chest to also touch him, so the only thing that was in the air was my butt. He did not hesitate to enter quickly because he already knew she was ready. One of his legs was on the bed, which made me feel it deeper and deeper, while the sheet helped me camouflage the screams of pleasure that came out of my mouth. But that didn't last for long because Oliver grabbed my hair tightly and lifted my face, leaving it in the air. Let them hear you, he said between his own moans. Let them know that I'm making you mine. And I obeyed. When we had finished the fourth round, Oliver leaned me on his chest and drew on my back. I felt happy and satisfied because I had what I had wanted so much for several months, and the experience had surpassed any imagination I had had in the past. I had done it, I told myself, congratulating myself for bringing into bed a younger boy who had taught me what it meant to enjoy intimacy. However, when we were changing, Oliver said something that made me realize that my plan wasn't really my own. I already knew it, he said. I frowned. What are you saying? I already knew Sophie had done that. I stopped my hand who was adjusting my dress. Why didn't you tell me anything? I asked. You offered yourself to me on a silver platter, and I wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Oliver's comment would have seemed shameless to me if it were anyone else, but coming from him, it seemed like having an accomplice in a forbidden adventure. I laughed softly, almost as if I were a little girl who had committed a prank, as I took off my clothes in front of him again and let him do whatever he wanted with my body all night. Oliver and I said goodbye in the morning as if nothing had happened, while Sophie thanked him for taking care of me when she had gone to sleep. I'm not going to lie and say I was remorseful when I wasn't. On the contrary, it was as if we both had a new inside joke to laugh about when we were alone. He would continue to take care of his mother-in-law when my daughter couldn't, and I couldn't be more grateful to have such a diligent son-in-law who would bring the stars down to bed for me on nights when I was cold. And now tell me, would you take advantage of the opportunity to feel this way thanks to your son-in-law? Comment and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Until next time. The story I will tell you today is proof that sometimes the unthinkable can become reality. I never imagined that my bachelorette party would become an experience that would change my perspective on my desires. That would teach me to enjoy every moment without prejudice. My name is Natasha. I am 30 years old and I'm about to get married. My fiance's name is Henry, and he asked me for my hand 6 months ago during a romantic dinner. I love Henry with all my heart, and I'm willing to live my life with him. So when he asked me the big question, my answer was a resounding yes. Once our wedding date was chosen, my fiancé and I began the preparations. We have had help from our respective families, and also from our groomsmen. Of course, my lifelong best friend started planning my bachelorette party the moment they heard the news. And although at first I didn't give it much importance, when the wedding date approached, doubts began about my bachelorette party, especially from my fiancé. Henry didn't agree with the bachelorette party, but my best friend promised him that it would only be a weekend getaway and that he shouldn't worry because they wouldn't do anything to put our relationship at risk. Basically, a totally harmless girls' outing where we will drink brandy, eat seafood on the beach, and enjoy a weekend of connection between lifelong sisters. A trip to enjoy a stay in an inn by the sea. But what they didn't mention is that it wouldn't be just any weekend. Obviously, they didn't tell me. Sometimes living in ignorance was much better than facing reality. That is why when the long-awaited trip with my friends arrived, I promised Henry that on Monday, his fiancée would be ready to become his wife. What the future me did not know is that on Monday, I would return from the trip with a mixture of remorse and emotion for having given in to pleasure in a sinful and dirty way. And that what I was going to experience with my friends would unite us in a way we never imagined. Our adventure began on a Friday morning. My friends came in a caravan in 2 cars, and from my house we left for our destination, enjoying the sun and loud music. We sang our favorite songs, happy and full of anticipation for what awaited us when we arrived at the beach. I would soon become Mrs. Miller, and the ring on my ring finger was a constant reminder that my days of singleness were coming to an end. And my friends knew it. I hadn't felt like this in a long time. Planning the wedding had consumed my energy, and I was busy most of the time. Even going on dates with Henry was a titanic task, not to mention getting intimate. My body was screaming to free myself from all the pressure and stress that I had been accumulating since the preparations for the wedding began. The trip to the beach house that my friend Lily had rented took 4 hours. Upon arrival, the owner of the house greeted us and gave us a quick tour of the facilities and surroundings. The house was small and quaint. It had huge windows with frames painted sky blue, and in the back, there was a smooth stone path that led to the beach. The view of the sea was amazing, and I was touched by the fact that my friends chose this small, private paradise to throw me a bachelorette party. So we immediately settled in to begin preparations and enjoy the rest of the day on the beach. The next day, I woke up with breakfast ready and an itinerary designed so that I could be pampered in every way. I ate, laughed, and took photos with each of them, trying to have memories from before the party. By late afternoon, it was time to get ready. We were 6 women living in a small space, so we had to take turns bathing. One of my friends, Grace, had dedicated herself to the task of decorating the back room that faced the beach. There were rows of red ribbons hanging from the ceiling, with pictures of us taped on them, and a huge, thick arch of pink and red balloons had been placed on the door leading to the beach. But the preparations did not end there. On the dining room table, they placed a cake in the shape of a member. There were notes with naughty messages stuck in the corners and a lot of speech bubbles related to the theme. Additionally, each had a pair of limb-shaped tendrils hanging from their ears. I couldn't help but laugh. My friends had taken my bachelorette party seriously, and I knew this weekend would be unforgettable. I took photos and thanked them for being so enthusiastic about decorating and playing host to my last night as a single. "Today is your day, friend," Jasmine said with a smile. "Oh yes, so you do me the favor of being divine," Julia added as she hugged me. "Look, today we have a surprise for you, so I want you to forget about Henry for a while and enjoy." "A surprise?" I asked suspiciously. But none of them answered me. They just shared a mischievous look between them, and then Jasmine kicked me out of the room so that I could dedicate to beautifying myself. And I was like that for 2 hours. I put my hair up in a high bun and applied makeup. When I went to the room, I found a red dress hanging on a hook with a note that said, "To enjoy a night at the beach and debauchery, you must dress appropriately." I let out a laugh. I put on the dress, noticing that, in addition to being short, it was extremely scandalous. My entire back was low-cut, and it reached the middle of my thighs. Once I was ready, I texted Daphne to ask if I could leave the room now. A few minutes later, someone yelled at me to get out. I took a look in the mirror to check that everything was okay. I looked radiant and happy, so with a smile on my face, I left the room ready to enjoy my last days of being single. Everything outside was amazing. Flashing lights, music, and food. My friends immediately surrounded me and began placing things on top of me, like a gold sash with the words "Bachelor for One Night" written in red, a plastic crown that had a pair of pointy breasts in the middle, and finally, the thematic Sarcillos. We took photos, danced, and ate while drinks came and went. After celebrating for a while, I realized that Daphne had disappeared. "Where did Daphne go?" I asked for. There was no sign of her in the house or on the beach. "She's preparing your surprise," one of my friends responded with a smile that presaged danger. I was surprised, but my friends did their part by keeping me distracted. We continued celebrating for a while longer until I felt someone place their hands on my eyes from behind and whisper to me that the surprise was ready. The alcohol made me dizzy, so I couldn't identify which of my friends had whispered in my ear. They made me walk and sit down, and then the hands of one of my friends were replaced by a silk ribbon that was tied behind my head. Suddenly, the music stopped, and the music I asked for. Without the music, I could hear them murmuring. Suddenly, I heard a door open and the clicking of footsteps approaching. "Well, Natasha, it's time for you to enjoy your surprise," someone whispered in my ear. But it wasn't the voice of any of my friends, but of a man. But before I could react, slow, sensual music started playing, and I felt someone remove the tape from my eyes. Around me, there were 5 men dressed in formal suits with masks covering their eyes. They danced around me slowly, as if they were testing the waters. It seemed like a hypnotic dance, walking in circles and me in the middle, like a prey waiting for one of them to consume me in their fire. The alcohol, the pulsating lights, and the laughter and applause of my friends left me dazed. So the moment one of the men approached with slow, sensual movements, I leaned back. I covered my eyes with my hands, embarrassed by what I was seeing. The dark-skinned man had torn his shirt, and the image of his bare chest had knocked me off my feet. But soon curiosity made me open my fingers and see between them, and I liked what I saw. Each of them had taken it upon themselves to get rid of their shirts, and the result was pure strength, masculinity, muscles, and sweat. I couldn't make out their faces well because they had masks on, but I could see the unusual glow on their naked torsos and the way their pants tightened around their legs when they moved their hips to the music. My friends had hired some attractive dancers for my bachelorette party, and I couldn't believe it. I looked at Grace when I made contact with her and signaled to her that she would understand that when this was over, they would be in serious trouble. "Natasha, happy bachelorette party, friend. Enjoy, these chocolates are for you." Jasmine shouted next to me while she clapped and danced. If I had been in my right mind, I probably would have run away and taken refuge in my room, outraged at my friends for hiring some attractive dancers. I would have thought of Henry and his condition that there were no men at my farewell party, but the spectacle in front of me had me stunned and excited. It didn't take me long to enjoy it. In ignoring the voice in my mind that whispered that this was wrong, the men came and went from one place to another. They danced around us, slowly undressed and played with us, rubbing each other and letting us touch them. One of my friends soon invited them to drink with us once they finished their first show. And soon, we were laughing nonstop while they continued playing with us, taking advantage of their skills to seduce us and make us act silly and crazy. I don't know how long we were like this, but everything around me seemed incoherent and uncontrolled. One of my friends had vomited, another had run to the beach while she was undressing, and the rest of us were left dancing with the men. "Dance well, miss," one of them murmured in my ear. Motivated by his praise, I danced much slower and pressed myself against the muscular body that had me hugged behind my back. I could feel him grabbing my hips and grinding his manhood against me. The music became increasingly deafening, and the blood in my body began to feel like lava, traveling through every corner of my body until it burned everything in its path. Suddenly, one of the dancers joined us, and the sight of his naked torso made me hallucinate. He was too handsome. My hands were quick to caress the hot, sweaty skin, and when they both began to kiss my neck, one in front and the other behind, I couldn't help but moan and rub myself with need. I closed my eyes and let myself go. From there, things got out of control. One of the dancers and my friend Jasmine started doing it in the room. They were on the couch. The subject no longer had the mask and had his pants down to his knees. And on top of him was my friend, riding him intensely. "You like what you see?" asked one of the men who was dancing with me. I nodded, mesmerized and shocked by the sight of my friend and the man in the room. I had never witnessed a couple doing it. "Would you like to do the same as your friend?" one of them asked in my ear. I was so dazed by sensations and amazement that I couldn't link one thought to another. I had lost my sanity, and my body took control. "Yes," I answered as I grabbed one of them by the neck and kissed him. As if I were a doll, one of them picked me up and carried me to the table, the same table where my friends and I had shared a meal between talks and laughter. One of them positioned himself between my legs and grabbed me by the neck, kissing me as if he were hungry. The mysterious dancer, whose name I didn't know, was a mature man with a beautiful smile and sinful lips, so I wasted no time pulling him towards me. When I noticed its large size, the need was impossible to ignore. I wanted him to make me his now. But our private party didn't end there. The need in our bodies was insatiable, and that made us act with abandon. The clothes were left on the floor, and our bodies began to get to know each other. There were no preambles because we had already overcome the first phase of pleasure during our dance. In an instant, the man took me off the table and took me to another room. I sat in the middle of the couch with one of the dancers to my right and one of my friends to my left. When our eyes met, there was a dark fire that clouded our reason and made us act on pure instinct. I approached that woman who looked like a mermaid on the couch and kissed her. I didn't know who she was at that point, but she reciprocated with the same intensity, and the feeling of touching another body similar to mine was incredible. Soon, there were no longer just 3 of us on the couch. The rest joined us, and the game of exploration transformed into a tide of bodies ignited by an invisible and powerful force, desire. My hands and lips touched everything within reach, no matter if it was one of the dancers or one of the sensual women. During all that time, I didn't think about anything. I dedicated myself to receiving as much as I offered, as if it were a rite of passage to know and explore pleasure in all its fullness. There was no doubt, fear, or prejudice, just bodies possessed by music and the sea breeze. The next morning, I opened my eyes when the first rays of light illuminated the house. Everything was chaos, and a vague memory of what had happened hit me in the head. Most of them were naked, trapped in a dream, induced by the alcohol and the unbridled pleasure section we'd shared. The rest were no better. The half-dressed clothes were a reminder of the participation that each one had had in that forbidden game. At that moment, as I saw them intertwined on the furniture or on the floor like reproducing snakes, fears fell on my mind like a bucket of cold water. We had had relationships between several people without protection, without regard. I myself had involved 2 of my friends, and several of us had explored each other as if we were experiencing pleasure for the first time. When Monday arrived, we returned to the city in complete silence, ashamed, surprised, and worried, with the memory of what had happened and with a pact of silence that we would take to the grave. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my position. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video.